got a message for the people. A brilliant mind and a clean soul. She's standing up to the evil and making sure that we all grow strong enough to break these chains we in that keep us in this painful condition. She give us truth and a vision. That's why we listen. She break it down, 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 down.
Yes. Welcome back. You are listening to Lurie Daniel Favors on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action, where she do indeed break it down. And y'all, we have a lot to cover today. Things fall apart. They do. Sometimes the best laid plans and sometimes really the worst laid plans fall apart. And I want to start today's discussion of things falling apart as Donald Trump's war footing seems to slide all over the place. I want to remind you all about this principle known as Sankofa. Do you guys remember Sankofa? Sankofa is an Akan community symbol. It's a part of the Adinkra symbol system. And it's basically a symbol of a bird that is, I'm sorry, I said Adinkra symbol or Akan symbol? It's a part of the Adinkra symbol system, excuse me. And the bird is depicted as an image, a bird that's walking in one direction, and its head is turned back in the direction from which it came. And it's got this egg in its mouth. And the way that this symbol was explained to me by my elders was that the Sankofa bird recognizes that you have to go back to your past in order and understand the history in order to understand where you are today. Certainly if you hope to be able to plan for anything in the future. And if you don't look at history, then you're really not in a position to be able to intelligently understand anything. And that's one of the reasons why I focus so much on the history. And so to start today's history lesson, which is very important, I want to remind you all that at a certain point, we have had the opportunity to really explore what soldiers have had to say, soldiers who have gone to war. I want you all to take a listen to this clip. This is a quick clip. This is a conversation in 1969. This is in Vietnam. And this is a soldier who is speaking to a reporter while the horrors of war is happening behind him. And it's basically the soldier saying what nobody wants to hear. That's the caption. Let's hear from this soldier in their own words. 1969. Let's hear it.
If you could send one message to Americans 50 years in the future, what would it be?
Don't send your sons to finish what politicians start.
Ooh. Don't send your sons to finish what politicians start. Can I get an amen? Amen. It's so important that we recognize that these are lessons. The lessons we're going to talk about today, these are lessons that, quite frankly, are not new. And they're only going to be new for those of us who have been basically put into system structures where knowing things is not a part of your current existence. Now, the past exists so that we can learn from it. And it's really important that we're clear about just how important the history that we're focusing on right now is. Now, you all may recall that Donald Trump loves the camera. He loves the camera so much. He's always got something to say. He's always wants to be in the camera. He is a camera hog. And so it makes it really easy when we're thinking about history to be clear about the positions that Donald Trump has held in the past, particularly positions that would have put him in opposition to one, say, Kamala Harris. In one such moment, in several moments, Donald Trump has spoken extensively about his positions on war. In fact, I have been told by many a MAGA, including the black MAGA in my own family. I almost said household. They're not in my household, but in my own family. I have been told that one of the reasons they did not want to vote for that lady was because they said that lady was going to bring them into war. World War III, to be specific. Now, in case you might be thinking that the people I'm talking to have lost a few of their marbles, which I actually think has happened, you should also know that they were told this directly by their president. Listen to Donald Trump. Yes, you're going to hear him. Listen to Donald Trump in his own words as he talks about war and how he is not going to do it. Let's hear it.
I will tell you, you're not going to have a war with me, and you're not going to have a third world war with me. That I can tell you.
Huh. He said that, huh? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe he forgot. It's possible he forgot because he certainly seems to have not been remembering in remembrance of that when he decided to make the decisions that were made over this weekend, if he actually was the one making the decisions. One of the questions that I know a lot of people have had is why this war and why now? And frankly, that really depends on who you ask. Now, if you ask the Christians, not the black Christians who are actually followers of Jesus, not the actual Christians who actually believe in the word of Jesus. I'm talking about the white Christian nationalists. If you ask the white Christian nationalists why this war and why now, the answer may be so far back in history, it might surprise you. They want to go back to the book of Revelations. You should know that right now it's being reported that in the Pentagon, this war with Iran is being portrayed as a biblical war, a war that is going to bring about the rapture of the church because it's going to bring Jesus back. Because you got to remember, this country is led not just by white narcissists, it's also led by white Christian nationalists who actually believe that the book of Revelations is a prophecy. Now, I am about to step on some religious toes. I'm going to be kind about it, but I just need you all to know that when you are someone who only reads the Bible and you are not a scholar as to how the Bible came to be, you will believe anybody's interpretation about the Bible because all you have is the Bible itself to reference to. A lot of Christians, even the black ones, a lot of Christians do believe that Revelations is a prophecy. White Christian nationalists and evangelicals really believe that Revelations is a prophecy. And there are now reports of service members who are talking about the quote unquote unrestricted euphoria among segments of the chain of command. There are people up and down Donald Trump's regime who believe in white Christian nationalism so extensively that they recognize that their role in perfecting the holy word of Jesus as they understand it is to go to war in the Holy Land, because if Israel can go to war in the Holy Land with America backing it, then Jesus gonna come back and they will be able to reign on high in glory forever while the rest of us heathens deal with the tribulation. Now, I say the rest of us heathens because in the vision that these people have of what heaven looks like, ain't nobody non-white there. They have like a remigration approach to heaven, if you will. Now, Pete, his own mama said he's trash Hegseth, has over the course of the past several months been forcing the Pentagon to stream Christian broadcasting type of commentary. And they've had prayer sessions at the Pentagon. They've had Bible studies, but the white Christian nationalist kinds of Bible studies, these sorts of Bible studies that are in alignment with this idea of Israel being necessarily under attack so Israel can go to war and bring Jesus back. Now, all of this international policy is also wrapped up, tied up, and tangled up in white Christian nationalism beliefs about the end of days. Now, the reason I say that this is mythology, and I love good Christian mythology. I think there's nothing wrong with people who embrace Christian mythology and review it and read it. But the thing that you got to know about Christian mythology is that it is mythological. And again, if you do not actually study how the Bible came to be and all you read is the Bible, then you're going to be in a position of believing things simply because somebody else who didn't actually study how the Bible came to be believed it and taught it to you and told you was going to die and burn in hell for all times, even though hell is something that became really popularized by a slaver in the Caribbean. John J.N. Danbury, I believe was his name, but he basically was somebody who was so committed to enslaving that he was very upset when people would manumit their slaves, would free their slaves. And this is a person from whom a lot of people took their underpinnings and their beliefs about whether or not they might burn in a lake of fire forevermore. They took it from people like that. You should know these things. You shouldn't, if you're going to believe a belief that says you're the only right belief in the world and everybody else is going to go to hell unless they believe what you believe, you should know these things about the belief that you say that you believe. Now, because the book of Revelations is driving a lot of Americans' international policy, I think it's important for us to take just a minute to explore what we know about the book of Revelations. And so I thought it would be important for you not just to hear it from me, because a lot of y'all think that I be being hyperbolic. And while that might be true, I also be right. I also be right. Take a listen to Josh Discourse, or Josh Doss is his last name. He goes by Josh Discourse, an amazing statistician who does a lot of work in a whole host of areas. We've played a number of his clips before. Super smart brother. He's going to talk with us not just about policy and politics. He's going to talk to us here about the book of Revelations, the very book that is driving American international foreign policy right now. And it's important that we know this because Black Christians, you have a particularly important role to play in all of this. Let's take a listen.
Maybe some of the things that Nicki Minaj is saying about Christianity being under attack in America sound familiar. I'm about to explain something to you that you've probably noticed but never had an answer for. You've already probably thought it was pretty weird that the Christians, feel like they're under attack, given the fact that Christians are 62% of the country. Every single president we've had has been Christian. 87% of Congress and our lawmakers are Christians. I want you to think about every single McDonald's you've seen. It feels like they're everywhere, right? Every corner, every state. There are 13,000 McDonald's in America. There are 350,000 Christian churches in America. So maybe you thought to yourself, why do they feel like they're under attack? They live in dominance in society. The answer is the history of the book of Revelations. Revelations was written specifically to encourage first century followers of Christ who were being persecuted by the Roman Empire to stay faithful in the face of their persecution. The Roman Empire had created political and social structures and power imbalances that were dangerous and asymmetrical for Christians in Asia Minor, which is basically modern-day Turkey. That is also where John of Patmos, not John the Baptist, John of Patmos, the writer of Revelations, was based. What's important to know is that Revelations was not written as a prophecy about today. It was apocalyptic literature, which was popular during that time period. Shortly after Revelations is written, Christianity takes over the Roman Empire. And many Christians around the world end up living on the dominant end of power asymmetries, on the dominant ends of politics and society, like in the United States of America. But when we misread Revelations as a prophecy about today, it requires us to put ourselves in that narrative. Now we have to find a role for the massive oppressive Roman Empire. Do you get what I'm saying? Someone who doesn't just hate our God, importantly, they're also stronger than us. The only problem is, look around. Christians live in societal dominance, right? So it becomes hard to find one. But when you misread Revelations as a prophecy, you need a villain, a powerful villain. So oftentimes they negotiate with reality, live in cognitive dissonance, and find one. And it ends up being people like the LGBTQ community, which like less than 1% of the country is trans, or scientists, or marginalized communities, which is ironic because they often live on the weaker end of power asymmetries. But to fit in the prophecy of Revelations, you have to be oppressed. The reason why you didn't know this is because your church teaches you the Bible, but not biblical history. Ooh. Most of the questions that you still have will come from learning about biblical history. Additionally, 56% of America reads below a 6th grade level. The Bible is written at a 12th grade level. Most of the Christians you're talking to don't even possess the literary skills to understand that text. They don't have the literary skills to understand metaphor, sarcasm, tone, historical context. So they often end up relying on their pastors for the context. I implore you, you don't have to find the ministry of your life outside of the four walls of your church, but see if you can find some context in biblical history. It might help you understand the world around you.
Something tells me Pete, his own mama, said he's trash Hexeth, missed those lessons in biblical history. And when you realize that this nation is being led by people who are literally looking to the Bible, books that were written in the first century following the life of Jesus, that were not written to be prophetic nor claimed to be, but were literally written as a compilation of letters within the book of Revelations. I believe there's 6 or 7 letters within the book of Revelations to the people alive at that time. Had nothing to do with 2026. Had nothing to do with any of this stuff, but you got people right now who are the inheritors of the white Christian nationalist ideology who believe and are willing to go to war and have a sense of euphoria about it because they believe in the biblical end times literally as a prophecy. They're not that bright. Now, I don't mean to be offensive to those of you who up until this moment were like, oh my God, I believe something was a prophecy. It had nothing to do with prophecy. I'm just suggesting that because you are not in charge of a nation and you did not use your misinformation to go to war, it ain't no problem. It ain't no problem. You can believe what you want to believe. But when you choose to believe from a position of ignorance, it's really important that we're clear about the limitations of that belief. Now, the reality is we are asking questions like, why this war? Why now? And when we think about that, that's a very, very, very important question. And MAGA has an answer. MAGA has an answer for why this war right now. In fact, we can start with MAGA Mike Johnson. MAGA Mike, the Muppet Johnson, has a reason for why it is that we went to war other than the book of Revelations. Thank God. Thanking all the white Jesuses in the world, of which there are none. Take a listen to Mike Johnson as he explains in response to questions from reporters why this war and why this war now. Mike Johnson has an answer for it. Let's hear what he has to say.
To me, the most critical point is that this was a defensive measure, a defensive operation. And why is that? I took some notes, and this is not classified, so I'll tell you what I think is important.
Okay, here we go.
Israel was determined to act in their own defense here, with or without American support. Why? Because Israel faced what they deemed to be an existential threat. Iran was building missiles at a radical and a rapid clip to the point where our allies in the region could not keep up. As you know, Iran has long vowed to take out Israel, wipe it off the map, and they have long seen that as a critical threat to their very existence. Because Israel was determined to act, with or without the U.S., our Commander-in-Chief and the administration and the officials I just named had a very difficult decision to make. They had to evaluate the threats to the U.S., to our troops, to our installations, to our assets in the region and beyond. And they determined, because of the exquisite intelligence that we had, that if Israel fired upon Iran and took action against Iran to take out the missiles, then they would have immediately retaliated against U.S. personnel and assets. We have troops in harm's way, and we have many Americans in the region, and that was of great concern. If we had waited for all of those eventualities to take place, the consequences of inaction on our part could have been devastating. We don't know at what magnitude, but you can assume, because it is common sense, that if Iran had begun to fire all of their missile arsenal, short and mid-range missiles, at our personnel and our assets and our installations, we would have suffered staggering losses. And if we had waited to respond before acting first, then those losses would have been far greater than if we had done what we did.
It's giving crackhead logic, but I don't want to call it crackhead logic because people who are engaged in crack and addicted to crack are people who largely have had very unfair circumstances that they have had to navigate. So maybe it shouldn't be called crackhead logic, maybe snowblowing logic. It's cokehead logic. And if you think I'm a little off on this one, well, MAGA Mike Johnson wasn't the only one who said it. And I want to explore this just a little bit because it's important that we're crystal clear as to what these people are saying here. Marco Rubio said something very, very similar. I want you all to take a listen to Marco Rubio because in this clip, Marco Rubio is basically saying the very same thing. And again, I think I heard what you all heard, but I'm not quite sure as to how they are thinking that actually makes sense. I want you all to listen to it. I don't have a video for this one. Take a listen to this clip. This is Marco Rubio saying something very, very similar to MAGA Mike Johnson. Let's take a listen.
Does Congress have to weigh in? Does Congress have to weigh in? Is the president defending Johnson? And does Congress have to weigh in? And was there an imminent threat? Did you tell lawmakers that there was an imminent threat?
There absolutely was an imminent threat, and the imminent threat was that we knew that if Iran was attacked, and we believed they would be attacked, that they would immediately come after us. And we were not going to sit there and absorb a blow before we responded, because the Department of War assessed that if we did that, if we waited for them to hit us first after they were attacked, and by someone else, Israel attacked them, they hit us first, and we waited for them to hit us, we would suffer more casualties and more deaths. We went proactively in a defensive way to prevent them from inflicting higher damage. Had we not done so, there would have been hearings on Capitol Hill about how we knew that this was going to happen, and we didn't act preemptively to prevent more casualties and more loss of life.
Let me see if I had it straight. So if you were to hear somebody come up to you and say, hey, man, I had to knock a motherfucker out. And the reason I had to knock that motherfucker out is because I knew that he was going to hit that motherfucker. And if he hit the motherfucker, I knew the motherfucker was going to hit back. And so if he hit back, then I felt like I was going to be in the range of the people who was going to get hit by the hit back. So I decided I was going to hit first with him, and we was going to hit the motherfucker together so that we could just skip all that stuff in between. So maybe not crackhead logic, definitely cokehead logic, definitely cokehead logic. The Israelis was going to hit the Iranians. And so instead of using our power and the fact that we fund the Israelis, they got free health care because of American tax dollars. They got the military they got because of American tax dollars. They got the ability to engage in all the things that they have done to Gaza because of American tax dollars. Instead of saying, don't do it or we're going to cut you off, we decided to just join in on the jumping. So yeah, we jumped that motherfucker and what? That don't sound like cokehead logic to y'all in terms of like when it comes to like what foreign policy should sound like. That feels like cokehead logic to me, especially when we're considering the fact that the Pentagon has already said, as I reported yesterday, there was no imminent threat. When the Pentagon told us yesterday that we don't know what Donald Trump and Marco Rubio and all these other cokeheads are talking about, there was no imminent threat. And if you think I'm stretching the truth, here's Senator Mark Warner, who's saying the exact same thing. It's cokeheads running the nation, cokeheads who believe that Revelations was a prophecy. Let's take a listen to Mark Warner.
Let's also be clear. I've said before, I've said now, there was no imminent threat to the United States of America by the Iranians. There was a threat to Israel. We equate a threat to Israel as the equivalent of an imminent threat to the United States, then we are in uncharted territory. We have seen the goals for this operation Changed now, I believe, 4 or 5 times.
So it was a threat to Israel, but not really a threat to Israel, only a threat that they would respond to Israel's aggression. Like, that was the threat. Israel was going to throw a punch, and it was going to have to face what happened when they got hit back in the face. So I'm thinking about this like on a playground. And so because Israel was going to get a punch back for the punch that they threw, then the Americans had to get into it. Also revelations. So if there's no imminent threat, and the Americans seem to be very confused about why exactly they decided to go to war, and I'm not exaggerating on this point either, they are very, very confused. And it seems as though they do. Y'all remember that song? You put your right foot in, you put your right foot out, you put your right foot in, and you shake it all about. You do the whole. Remember that song? It kind of feels like that's what we watching when I watch the Americans scramble as they try to explain. Maybe it's the Book of Revelations and divine intervention. Maybe it's something else, but let's see the way that their rationale has evolved over just the past 4 days of their war.
And we may have casualties. That often happens in war.
I don't know if this is technically a war.
We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it.
This isn't a war. We haven't declared war.
The Secretary of Defense, who calls himself the Secretary of War, said today this is a war.
We set the terms of this war, from start to finish.
Nobody should classify this as war. It is combat operations.
War is hell, and always will be.
Strategic strikes are not war.
I guess the Congress people that you saw in that clip are all convinced that it's not a war, because that would mean that they would have had to have done their job beforehand to authorize this. But it does seem like we're in a war.
Thank you, Abby Phillip, for reminding us of the importance of this moment. And so the administration is basically in a do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Approach to policy. And when that's the reality, and they're being led by people who believe that the Book of Revelations gives them instructions for what to do in 2026, despite the fact that that was a book of compiled letters that were written in like 93 Common Era, a couple years, decades after Jesus has ascended on into glory, for those of you who believe that part of Christian mythology. As Mehdi Hassan said, this is the most insane and absurd definition of an imminent threat, because you heard what Abby Phillip said there. If this is a war and Congress did not declare it, this is a wholly illegal war. And illegal wars have very, very legal consequences. And if we're saying that the threat was to Israel and not a threat to the Americans, as Mehdi Hassan stated, quote, this is the most insane and absurd definition of an imminent threat I've ever heard in my life. Our ally and proxy Israel that we arm and fund was about to illegally attack Iran. So we joined in the attack because that illegal attack would have led to an attack on us. These people think you're stupid, maybe because they don't fund your education anymore, and so they think that that's actually working. But lucky for you, you are listening to shows like this that are helping to break it all down for all of you. And for those of you who are not able to capture this, you want to be able to run this back, don't you worry. This is going to be most of the content of today's podcast episode. The podcast, again, is called Lurie Breaks It Down, which is available anywhere you get your podcast. Now, according to the Financial Times, which is not a paper that I think is better than any of the others, but it is a paper that the wealthy whites read. And because it's a paper the wealthy whites read, it is a paper that I, too, like to read, because I like to know what they're doing and what's happening and what's going on. According to the Financial Times, Donald Trump struggles to explain why he launched another Middle Eastern war. Reason for conflict that has already killed hundreds of Iranians and 6 U.S. soldiers remains unclear. That's in the paper of record. Okay, regime change, a campaign to stop Tehran's ballistic missile program, help for protesters, and retribution for the deaths of American soldiers. Donald Trump, the article continues, has cited several reasons for launching the U.S. into another Middle Eastern war. On Monday evening, his Secretary of State had another reason. The U.S. knew Israel was posed to attack Iran, which they would believe would retaliate against the United States, and they're basically repeating the same sorts of cokehead logic. It's snow-blowing logic. It's snow-blowing logic. And when we think about that, it reminds us of just what a precarious position we are in, because not enough of y'all wanted to vote for that lady. Today's election day, by the way. Shout out to Texas, shout out to North Carolina, and shout out to Arkansas. Y'all got elections happening right now. You've got Rodney Slater in the state of North Carolina, one of many who's running right now to unseat Democrats who have been very, very bad at their job. You've got Jasmine Crockett in the state of Texas running for Senate, and this is in the Democratic primary. You've got who is our friend? Oh, Chris Jones. Chris Jones in the state of Arkansas. Y'all need to be going out and making sure that you are voting, because you could have very qualified, amazing, brilliant black people in leadership, but that's not going to happen if you don't go vote. Now, this conflict has already destabilized oil markets, not just oil markets, but natural gas markets as well. We talked yesterday about the Strait of Hormuz, and unfortunately, I talked only about oil when it came to the Strait of Hormuz, which is a strait that the Iranians are able to basically control, which has been functionally shut down now. But it's not just oil, it's also natural gas. And when you're considering the fact that Donald Trump did not even have the decency or the respect for the men and women and people he's going to send into war to leave his freaking golf course, to at least be in a situation room, a skiff where he could have quiet and protected private conversations that would be protected from everybody. You got people right now who are at Mar-a-Lago talking about they knew that they were going to war before the Congress did because they overheard the waiters talking about it at Mar-a-freaking-Largo. And a lot of people right now in Trump's world are very, very worried about this. Eric Prince, who founded Blackwater, private security firm, some would call them mercenaries. Eric Prince is talking about, wait a minute, this is going to uncork a significant can of worms and chaos and destruction in Iran now. Who takes over? I don't see how this is in keeping with the president's MAGA commitment. You've got MAGA influencers like Matt Walsh who have said, quote, so far we've heard that although we killed the whole Iranian regime, this was not a regime change war. And although we obliterated their nuclear program, we had to do this war because of their nuclear program. And although Iran was not planning on any attacks in the U.S., they also might have been. Because even MAGA can see just how crazy and fugazi this shit is right now. And it's not just the Americans realizing slowly, very slowly, that they have fucked up. It's also the international community. Remember the last time America kicked off an illegal war? And they were able to call it an axis of evil. And they were able to call in on all their friends to come in and help. Well, friends, how many of you still have them? Not the Americans. Because they pissed off the whole freaking world. Listen to what happened when Britain's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was responding to an inquiry as to whether or not the Brits were going to add their troops to help the Americans in their time of revelation and need. Let's take a listen.
Exposing our military personnel to action that risks their lives, making sure that it is lawful before we ask them to do that. I think that is the duty of the Prime Ministers, and previous Prime Ministers have taken exactly the same approach. I will, of course, read the Shadow Attorney's advice, but I'm very clear in the advice that I received, and I will not commit our military personnel to unlawful action. That is not what they would expect and deserve. They are entitled to better than that.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. It is lonely out there in fucked upville. It is. So translation, the British ain't gonna rubber stamp this war without some legal grounding. The Americans don't have no legal grounding because, again, it's Cokehead logic in the book of Revelations that's determining what's happening right now. And all of this is making mofos shake right on out their piece, and rightfully so. The Washington Post and a number of other outlets are talking about the sheer paranoia right now that's taking grip in the Pentagon, of all places. Now, these are supposed to be the staunchest of the soldiers, and they're worried right now. According to the reports, quote, Pentagon officials are worried about Donald Trump's Iran strikes spiraling out of control if they stick to his timeline. While the president boasts that the strikes could continue for several more weeks, military leaders are sounding the alarm behind the scenes about U.S. air defense stockpiles running out if the fighting goes on that long. The mood here is intense and paranoid, one insider told the Washington Post. While U.S. Central Command said that more than 1,000 targets have already been wiped out, and the White House has boasted, this is coming out directly out of the reports, y'all, the White House has boasted of destroying most of the country's top leadership, Iran still has managed to unleash a huge number of retaliatory attacks, reportedly alarming military officials. My understanding of this is because Iran does not have a culture of personality. They have systems. They have institutions. And so when you wipe out one layer of their leadership, they just graduate the layer that was underneath it to the next role. And they're able to sit in those positions. They understand what the plans are because the plans didn't die just because you killed the people who had authored them. And they're basically kicking ass right now. Part of the concern has also been the retaliatory attacks. According to the reports, quote, each retaliatory attack by Iran requires U.S. air defense interceptors. And those interceptors are limited. Quote, there is concern about this last lasting more than a few days, said a source to the Washington Post. I don't think people have fully absorbed yet, like, what this has done to stockpiles. At this point, it's on. It's not like we can say, hey, Iran, we're out of missile defense systems, so now we're going to pause for a minute. Is that okay? This will stretch our ability to defend everything that we need to defend. And this is according to the House Armed Services Committee's top Democrat, Representative Adam Smith, saying that U.S. resources have been stretched thin. It's hard out here when you are unrighteous, when you are devilish in your spirit and soul, when you are using ancient texts that ain't had nothing to do with who you are today to justify your misaligned belief of your own power, strength, and superiority. And Donald Trump put out an 8-minute video saying that the strikes in those airstrikes, and you heard part of it in this clip, in one of the clips we played earlier, that Americans are going to be killed. And he had the nerve to say that often happens in war, to which I say, you orange motherfucker, how would you know? You 5-time draft dodging, bone spur claiming dimwit who used your wealthy whiteness access to avoid ever having to fight, you bitch. I just don't think you are in a position to ask these questions or to make these statements, because how the fuck would you know? Your kids ain't gonna fight. You know who's gonna be fighting? The whites. The whites are going to be fighting. Unfortunately, however, we did learn that of those 6 U.S. soldiers, initially there were reports that the first 3 of them had been people of African heritage. We have since learned, and I'm so glad we didn't play that yesterday, that was actually footage from a previous incursion into Iran where 3 black soldiers did in fact die. But yeah, basically, there's no end in sight. And we're now in a situation where you've got Pete, his own mama said he's trash Hegseth, actually talking about this as if we didn't just go through the history that we all just went through. This man is out here saying shit like, we didn't start it, but we're going to finish it. That sounds to me like somebody who knows they finna get their ass kicked, and they did get their ass kicked after they picked a fight that they could not handle. But hear the man in his own drunken words, because I believe that alcohol must have played a part in figuring out who was going to run this war. Take a listen.
Through the blood of our people. Car bombs in Beirut, rocket attacks on our ships, murders at our embassies, roadside bombs in Iraq and Afghanistan, funded and armed by Iranian Quds Force and IRGC killers. My generation of veterans carry the names of brothers who never came home, brothers butchered by Iranian-backed roadside bombs and well-armed militias, thousands of our own. We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it. Their war on Americans has become our retribution against their Ayatollah.
Delusion. You are delusional, sir. You are maybe drunk. That or coked out. I don't know. You moved a little slow for coke, but certainly you have a problem. Now, what's crazy about this is that we are also in a position where Donald Trump, his tenuous grip on reality seems to be coming to bear. He gave a whole speech, and like in 5 minutes of the speech, he was talking about curtains that he had picked out for the ballroom. And y'all think I'm joking. And I know you think it's cruel for me to show you this man and have you hear his voice in his own words, but it's important for us to know the horrors that were wrought by people staying home on this today and election day in America. Let's take a listen to Donald Trump as he talks about what's really important about this war. Take a listen.
See that nice drape? I picked those drapes in my first term. In about a year and a half from now, you're going to see a very, very beautiful building. And there's your entrance to it right there. In fact, it looks so nice, I think I'll save money on the doors, because it can't get more beautiful than that. I always like gold, but I think we can save a lot of money. I just saved curtains.
I know we're going to war, but I can see Russia from my house. I just got curtains for a good discount, and you can save 15% with... This is y'all's president. Now, unfortunately, black people are still a part of this military operation. And we have to say unfortunately, because I want you to remember, in just a minute, we're going to play a video clip, a warning actually, for black women in the military, because unfortunately for black women in the military, sexual assault during war skyrockets, escalates, and we need to be aware of that. But in case you thought that perhaps there was some reason some reason that we should not feel confident, some reason that we should not believe that this is going to, if you felt like, what's happening overseas is going to have a negative impact for us here because we're going to have, domestic terrorist attacks. And the last time that we went to war, domestic terrorism was the whole thing. There was already allegations about that brother down in Texas, although he had on a Property of Allah shirt. And baby, it's Ramadan. My understanding is that Muslims would never defile themselves by having anything with the word Allah on it. So that feels like a whole CIA ass operation to me. But do you guys feel like perhaps we might be more at risk because domestic terrorism might become a thing because of the concerns about what we have unleashed across the country? Are you concerned? Well, you might be. But luckily for you, America's got all the best people. Now, for those of you looking on YouTube, be prepared. Jump scare coming. Ready? Here you go. Remember this guy? Thomas Fugate, the intern in charge, the 22-year-old Trump team pick to lead terrorism prevention. And just so you're clear, this is what he looks like over here. He's 22, maybe 23 now, maybe 23. But do you remember him? We talked a lot about Thomas Fugate. Oh, that prepubescent look in his eye. He's the guy who has gardening experience. He once was a part of the Model United Nations when he was in high school, or maybe that was in college. But 1 year out of college and with no apparent national security expertise, ProPublica reminds us that Thomas Fugate is the Department of Homeland Security official who is tasked with overseeing the government's main hub for combating violent extremism. So I know you're worried that just because y'all's president is cuckoo for fucking Cocoa Puffs and he's surrounded by people who actually believe that Revelations is a prophecy and not a compilation of letters that was written for people who lived before the year 100 CE and ain't got nothing to do with what's happening right now. And I know that you're probably worried that that is going to trigger a lot of terrorism attacks, but don't you worry. All the best people, even if they're WEIs, white, entitled incompetence, and if they got nothing else, at least they've got that. And that should comfort us all, because isn't that all that you need? That's all that you need. But what you also need is common sense, because unfortunately, we have a whole lot of soldiers right now who are going to be facing a whole lot of pain, a whole lot of heartache, and a whole lot of disaster as they try to figure out how to make it out on the other side of this war. And for Black women, it is Black Women's History Month, also known as Melanated March. There is a particularly concerning warning that you all need. And any of you who have anyone in the military who is right now at risk of deployment and being engaged in active duty, being called up, I want to make sure that you let them know that this information is out there and they need to hold on to it in case they, God forbid, should ever need it. Let's take a listen.
For the Black women that are currently deployed, about to deploy, or active duty, you need to stick with your battle buddies. You need to scan those around you and figure out who is going to make sure that you stay alive. I'm not talking about the people in your platoon. I'm talking about your battles. If you haven't figured it out by now, you are fighting for a country that does not give a f about you. A lot of people get mad at that statement. Why'd you sign up then? Well, I signed up to go to college. Because currently the people that took out loans to go to college, see, because we have to go to college in order to get a good job, but the people that took out loans are now getting their wages garnished because they can't afford to pay those loans back, and they're using the money that they got from the good jobs. Anyway, you get it. Active duty at your post, getting ready to deploy, or already deployed, please know that the men around you are in survival. And because they're in survival and because there's less rules when you deploy, people think that they can do whatever the they want to do. They do not think that there will be consequences because they're in a foreign country. You need to watch your back. When I was active duty, I saw sergeants, first sergeants, privates, commanders, colonels. I saw their behavior, especially towards women, which made me think about Lavina Johnson. Lavina Johnson was 19 years old. She was deployed in Iraq, and they found her dead in a tent. She had signs of severe sexual battery. She had broken teeth. She had chemical burns. And the Army said, suicide. Let me give you a hint at who might have done it. It wasn't the enemy. Civilians will say, well, if all that stuff actually goes down, why don't you tell? But state police can't do anything, and it's hard to tell the government on the government. A lot of women get essayed in the military. You are a woman around men that are aggressive. They're confused. They're mad that they even signed up. They haven't been around their wives in a long time. They're sexually frustrated. They think that war crimes and consequences don't apply to them. There's a lot of reasons, but a lot of women get essayed in the military, and I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of pain on their faces, and the pain on the women's faces that get essayed by my friend, or he was my battle, we served together, it far outweighs just any of the pain that I've seen. This is going to sound really up, but I don't know a cutesy way to say it. If this does happen to you, do not run to the first female sergeant or female commander that you see. Do not. Those females work really hard for their positions, and you'd be surprised how much they're just not girls. Do not act like you are going to tell on that person. Do not act like you're going to go get justice for yourself. I know you're going to want to. Do not do that. You are going to become a target. If you go too sharp, if you go to the program that they put in place to make sure that that type of doesn't happen, if you go to them, they're going to get all that information and bring it right back to your sergeant or commander. So if your sergeant or your commander is the one that did it, they're going to know you told. So what do, right? You're going to need to gather information. You're going to get times, dates. You're going to get what people were wearing, who was around. You're going to get, hopefully they didn't leave a sample, but if they did, you're going to get that sample and you're going to keep it. You're going to need to take pictures and videos. And for some reason, the people that do nasty shit love bragging about it. So if it was me, I'd get a recording of that. You're going to want to wait till you're back home safe after the award ceremonies and the soldiers are back with their family. When you are safe, you're going to want to gather a group. Your platoon sergeant, that battle I was telling you about, your first sergeant, that commander, and that sharp representative. You're going to want to make sure they're all in the room when you go ahead and you present your case. Then you're going to request to get the out of that unit. What's going to happen to him? Probably nothing. The higher the rank of the person you're telling on, the more in trouble you're going to be. You're going to want to and need to go to group therapy and therapy every week. Do not skip therapy. Don't want to be in anymore? I completely understand. They're going to need the notes from therapy. Go to therapy.
And it is absolutely tragic that women have to make videos like that, but it's also tragic that we are in this condition at all. It is tragic that we are here having to have this conversation. And considering it doesn't look like it's going to get better before it gets worse, I need us to be as prepared as possible. We are going to hold it here for now. YouTube, we appreciate y'all. I know this has been a lot. But yeah, we got much more to come. Urban View on the other side of this commercial break. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. If you missed any of this and want to replay, do not worry. The podcast episode is going to have the similar content, and that will be out later on today. Lurie Breaks It Down podcast everywhere where you can get your podcast. You will be able to get that one as well.